Dakar. Promoting dialogue.
It's made there in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Senegal's Constitutional Council rejects Macky Sall's coalition complaint against Ousmane Sonko's candidacy for November parliamentary election.
This is absolutely devastating. This is not good for the credibility of the Constitutional Council. This is not good for the credibility of Senegal.
Human rights groups in Guinea intensify calls on the whereabouts of activists Biloba and Fonike Menge. The Nigerian government revokes the citizenship of 9 individuals charged with multiple offenses, including treason. And the Gambia set to bounce back as its 2024 tourist season forecast surpasses previous records.
My expectation is high because we are fully booked.
With the African people, mostly the Afra and Fufu, with the tourists, they like the Domoda. I expect it to be very good.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners within and across the African sub-region. This edition begins right here in Senegal because the Constitutional Council has dismissed the complaint filed by Macky Sall's Taku Wallu coalition against the candidacy of Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko ahead of the November parliamentary election. In its complaint, the opposition TWS coalition argued that Sonko's previous conviction by the Constitutional Council provided sufficient grounds for his disqualification. However, the council validated Sonko's candidacy, including the candidacy of Barthélémy Dias, the mayor of Dakar, and head of the Sam Samankadou coalition. This ruling now paves the way for a continued showdown between Macky Sall and Ousmane Sonko in Senegalese politics, promising a tightly contested legislative election on November 17 this year. Oge Obiorika completes the story.
The Constitutional Council ruled that the arguments presented by the main opposition Taku Wallu Senegal coalition, led by former President Macky Sall, were not enough to invalidate Ousmane Sonko's candidacy. The Council based its decision on 2 key legal points. Firstly, it emphasized that Article 184 of the Electoral Code, which the applicant referred to, does not cover issues of ineligibility which are addressed in Article 182. Secondly, it clarified that only the minister responsible for elections has the authority to refer a candidate's eligibility to the council in case of doubt. Without this referral, the council stated that it cannot rule on ineligibility, which means the contested candidacies remain valid. This decision brought relief to supporters of PASTEF who were concerned about their leader's candidacy being invalidated. Consequently, the anticipated competition between Ousmane Sonko and Macky Sall will now take place. Former President Macky Sall, whose administration was challenged by Sonko, saw his chosen successor, Amadou Ba, lose in the 2023 presidential election. Now he, Macky Sall, will once again confront his formidable opponent on the political stage. It is very clear that the opposition Taku Wallu Senegal coalition and the ruling PASTEF party each wants to control the National Assembly with an overwhelming majority.
Oge Obiorika with that report. Meanwhile, the state of Senegal aims to produce 100,000 barrels of oil per day. The objective was discussed on Wednesday at the Presidential Palace by President Diomaye Faye and a delegation from the Woodside company that operates the Zangoma oil field. In the partnership between the Australian-based oil company and the state of Senegal, 75% of the income covers the operation. The remaining 25% is shared between Senegal and the company Woodside Energy, a revelation made by the CEO of the oil company, bringing us up to speed with the famous question of the renegotiation of oil contracts in Senegal. Yet what Monja Mbe, a Senegalese who specializes in oil matters, thinks.
Les nouvelles autorités ont cette volonté-là.
The new authorities have the will to renegotiate, especially since it was an electoral promise. The principle of renegotiation itself is not a problem for me, but we need to see what exactly we are renegotiating. Specialists need to thoroughly analyze these contracts in detail to see if there's room for improvement. As you know, we're dealing with very powerful multinationals that have extensive legal teams behind them, scrutinizing every detail, every word of the contracts. So engaging in such a process is not something to be taken lightly. It is a complex operation.
And in your opinion, how should these renegotiations be conducted? Should we focus on taxation or address other aspects?
Vous savez, dans un contrat pétrolier, il y a plusieurs aspects. C'est très complexe. Il y a plusieurs rubriques qu'il faut voir.
You know, in an oil contract, there are many aspects. It's very complex. There are several sections to consider, such as whether it was done before the project or not. Now, the big question is how to get the operator, who's already signed a valid contract and has the law on their side, to agree to the principles of renegotiation. This is where the real challenge lies, requiring a lot of diplomacy and tact. How do you get someone who is satisfied with their contract and has the law on their side to agree to a negotiation that will likely not be in their favor? Because if we renegotiate, it is not to improve what the company has, but quite the opposite.
Moja Mbe is an expert in oil-related matters. To the Gambia now, because last week the country officially welcomed the 2024 tourist season, kick-starting a promising economic period for local stakeholders. The industry is set to bounce back after years of challenges associated with COVID-19, with this season forecast to surpass previous records. Sankule Janko completes the story.
The Gambia officially welcomed the 2024 tourist season, kick-starting a promising economic period for local stakeholders, with this season forecast to surpass previous records. The Gambia tourism sector is a significant driver of the economy, contributing more than 20% of the gross domestic product, GDP, as well as creating jobs and local livelihoods. Stakeholders, including hoteliers, tour operators, and restaurant owners, are eager to seize the momentum. Amar Boaro, general manager of the Baba Hotel Resort in Bijilo, expresses optimism about the 2024 season, even though his hotel is yet to be fully booked.
At the moment, the bookings are very slow. They are not 100% confirmed, but we are hoping it will be a good season because we are having some new tour operators coming over.
The tourism industry is also tapping into the trend of sustainable travel. Local guides are being trained to offer eco-tours promoting conservation while providing unforgettable experiences. Musa Jata is one such tour guide who takes tourists around the Gambia and Senegal for bird watching.
They would like to see those kind of birds like the Egyptian plovers and owls, carmine bee-eaters and raptors, eagles. People like to see them. So for me, I for one, my expectation is high because we are fully booked.
Traditional crafts and local cuisine are set to play a pivotal role this season. Restaurant owners are excited to showcase their local cuisine to a broader audience. I strolled along the Senegambia Strip, a social hub and a favorite among tourists, offering a captivating blend of stunning beaches, lively restaurants, and vibrant life. Here, Vanderval Jago, owner of the African Queen restaurant and bar, tells me some of the popular local cuisine among tourists and his expectations for the new season.
We are very famous for our sizzlers. With the African people, mostly the Afra and Fufu. With the tourists, they like the Domada. I expect it to be very good.
As the season unfolds, expectations remain high. From the vibrant markets of Serekunda to the serene beaches of the coast, the Gambia is ready to welcome the world once again.
Sankle Janko reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We now move into the Sahel region, particularly in Mali, where torrential rains continue to hit the capital Bamako and several other localities across the country. The death toll from the floods keeps rising. Since the start of the rainy season, the country has recorded over 260,000 affected individuals, including 77 deaths and more than 100 injuries. Here are the further details from our correspondent in Bamako, Aliyu Cham, voiced by Eche Atisu.
Heavy rains continue to pour over Bamako and several other regions of Mali. The most recent downpour on Tuesday further flooded the Malian capital. The abundant rainfall has caused floods that have affected thousands of people. According to the latest reports from the Interministerial Committee for Crisis and Disaster Management, the rising water levels have led to collateral damage. General Daoud Ali Mohamedine, the Minister of Security and Civil Protection, presented a comprehensive assessment covering the period from October 1 to 7, 2024, reporting 7 floods in the regions of Mopti, Koulikoro and the district of Bamako, as well as 7 landslides in the capital. He also confirmed the tragic loss of a human life in Mopti. The overall report on the rainy season indicates impressive figures: 656 cases of flooding, 8 lightning strikes, 6 episodes of strong winds, and 37,099 collapses occurred throughout Mali. These disasters affected 47,955 households, representing a total of 264,648 people affected, with a human toll of 77 deaths and 148 injuries. These floods have also affected hundreds of schools in several educational districts. However, Malian authorities are striving to find solutions for a better school reopening. On his part, Amadou C. Savané, Minister of National Education, explained that to date, 128 schools are being used as temporary shelters for disaster victims. Beyond schools, the agricultural sector has not been spared. Hundreds of hectares have been submerged by water. According to meteorological data, the rains will continue until November.
That was Eche Atisu of a report sent in by Bamako correspondent Aliyu Cham. In Niger, the government has announced the provisional revocation of citizenship from 9 individuals. They face several charges, including colluding with a foreign power to engage in hostilities against the state, conspiracy against state authority, and treason, among others. This is the first time such a decision has been made since General Abdurrahman Chiani announced the establishment of a registry of high-risk individuals. Here is more in this report put together by Demba Amaan and voiced by Christopher Atichu.
The measure was taken in a decree signed Thursday by General Abdurrahman Chiani. It concerns a total of 9 individuals from various regions of Niger, including Niamey, Agadez, Zenda and Zongo, among others. They are accused, among other things, of conspiracy against state authority and treason, as well as participation in an effort to demoralize the army or the nation with the aim of harming national defense. The Nigerian government also suspects them of disseminating information or statements likely to disturb public order and engaging in activities that could disrupt public peace and security. To recall, on August 27, General Abdurrahman Chiani issued an ordinance establishing a registry of individuals or entities involved in acts of terrorism or offenses against Niger's strategic and or fundamental interests. The measure includes a series of sanctions such as freezing financial assets, banning movement from Niger and travel abroad, and provisional revocation of nationality. This revocation will become permanent if the individual concerned are sentenced to 5 years or more in prison.
That was Demba Amaan's report voiced by Christopher Atichu. Over to Burkina Faso, where Russia promises to increase to food and humanitarian aid in addition to its cooperative security ties with the Sahelan state. This decision emerged from a recent meeting between Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak and Burkinabe Prime Minister Apollinaire Joachim Kelemti-Tambela. According to the Russian official, the food and humanitarian aid will be provided through the United Nations. The assistance would include grain, medicines, and equipment to combat epidemics. Let's take you to Guinea as calls intensify for clarity on the disappearance of two activists, Fonike Mengi and Biloba. Now, human rights defenders are stepping in to demand the whereabouts of the two activists. Independent experts from the UN and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights have raised the alarm and urged Guinean authorities to take action. More details from Shalen Dinga and voiced by Imo Edit.
In a statement released on Thursday, an independent expert from the United Nations and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights expressed concerns over the disappearance of the two Guinean activists. In a statement, they fear that the two FNDC members may be victims of torture, mistreatment, or even extrajudicial executions. They are calling on the authorities to provide more information on the fate of Mamadou Biloba and Umar Sila, also known as Fonike Mengi. The independent expert from the United Nations and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights also urge the Guinean government to release the two activists and ensure their protection. They further indicate that the abduction of activists impacts the human rights community and hinders their work. Another issue mentioned in the statement is the death of detainees in prison under suspicious circumstances. The signatory experts call for consultations to end such unacceptable practices.
That was a report by Shalin Dinga, voiced by Imo Edit. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Senegal's Constitutional Council rejects Macky Sall's coalition complaint against Ousmane Sonko's candidacy for November parliamentary election. Human rights groups in Guinea intensify calls on the whereabouts of activists Biloba and Fonike Mengi. The Nigerian government revokes the citizenship of 9 individuals charged with multiple offences, including treason. The Gambia set to bounce back as its 2024 tourist season forecast surpasses previous records. Still ahead, we have the guest interview and the sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for staying with us. As a reminder, we streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. As Ghana prepares for the 2024 general elections, the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, WADIMOS, and the West Africa Election Observation Network have called on the Electoral Commission to prioritize transparency by enhancing communication and providing the comprehensive and final voter register to political parties as soon as possible. WADR's Nadia Detete reports.
Representatives from across West Africa, including Nigeria, Senegal and Liberia, it raised concerns about the trust in the Electoral Commission. Electoral violence was also a key concern in the Solidarity Mission's report, with heightened political tensions between the major parties, the NDC and the NPP, creating a potentially volatile environment. The report further highlighted poor female representation in Parliament and stressed the need for the 2024 Affirmative Action Act to politically empower women. Misinformation surrounding the elections, particularly via social media, was also flagged as an urgent issue that could lead to voter confusion. In their recommendations, the mission called on the Electoral Commission to strengthen public engagement, ensure a credible voter register, and adhere to election timetables. Reverend James Lahai, president of the West Africa Election Observers Network and chairperson of the delegation, reiterated the importance of these steps.
The Electoral Commission should ensure the comprehensive and final voter register are provided to political parties as soon as possible to allow political parties to plan their activities around it accordingly.
Wadamus and Wayon also urged political parties to avoid hate speech, comply with campaign financing laws, and sign the Peace Pact to maintain a peaceful electoral environment. They further stressed that security agencies should ensure their actions do not intimidate voters. For WADR, Nadedi Tete, Accra.
Still about Ghana, former Nigerian president and leader of the West African Elders Forum, Goodluck Jonathan has expressed optimism in the capabilities of Ghana's Electoral Commission ahead of the general elections. He shared this with the media following a series of high-level meetings with key election stakeholders, including the Electoral Commission and the Ghana Police Service. He reiterated the key role of the electoral management body and the security services playing in the success of an elections. Away from Ghana, the Nigerian government has announced the 220 acres of land available for oil exploitation and investment opportunities. Benja Kumulafi, Chief Executive of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, made this announcement on Wednesday at the Africa Oil Week in Cape Town, South Africa. Usman Umar in Abuja completes the story.
During his speech on the theme Unpacking the 2024 Nigerian Licensing Round, Benga Komolafe explains that the licensing rounds present significant opportunities for both domestic and international investors to participate in Nigeria's upstream oil and gas sector. He identified 7 deep offshore assets in the mini bid round and 24 acreages available for bidding in the 2024 licensing round. Komolafe emphasized that these licensing rounds will be conducted through a fair, transparent and competitive bidding process by Section 73, Subsection 1 of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA. Komolafe listed some of the blocks to include PPL 300, 301, 303, 2000, 3017, 3013 and 3016 among others. The chief executive of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission also highlighted that the Nigerian government has eliminated the requirement for the hefty signature bonuses to encourage investments. Previously, license bid rounds in Nigeria often required these significant upfront payments. Furthermore, the NUPRC has adopted a more pragmatic and strategic approach by removing the need for large front-loaded signature bonuses to attract investment. The NUPRC boss also mentioned that considerations are being made for attractive acreage sizing to align with international standards and improve Nigeria's competitiveness in global bid rounds. Nigeria possesses abundant crude oil, condensate reserves and natural gas reserves, representing over 30% and 33% respectively of the entire oil and gas reserves in Africa. In addition, the country has a wealth of other renewable energy resources. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar, reporting from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, the guest segment this afternoon is about the decision of the Constitutional Council here in Senegal to have dismissed the complaint filed by Macky Sall's Takuwalu coalition against the candidacy of Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko ahead of the November parliamentary election. Our guest is Professor Golgi Dieng, a Senegalese political analyst.
It's a mixture of surprise and non-surprise because I don't see what has changed between March 2024 when the same candidate was prevented from running for president by the same Constitutional Council and September of the same year. I don't see really what has changed in 7 months. The only change I can see here is that in March 2024, Mr. Sonko was in the opposition, and in September 2024, he is the prime minister. I'm not saying that this is what accounts for the change, because in general, the Constitutional Council, they base their decisions on what is written in the law. And maybe what they have said is in accordance with what is written in the law. But my question is, what the law says about somebody who has been sentenced to more than 6 months, even with suspension. The law says that that person may not vote. That person may not run for any electoral position.
Described the credibility of the Constitutional Council.
This is really something that, to me, harms a little bit the Constitutional Council, its credibility. Because no matter what happens, no matter who is candidate, the Constitutional Council has got to be consistent and keep and maintain the decision they made in March when that person was in the opposition. What they have done here may really push people to understand, to consider that the decisions made by the Constitutional Council in general change according to the persons in question, according to the person in question, whether they are in the opposition or leading the country. And this is absolutely devastating. This is not good for the credibility of the Constitutional Council. This is not good for the credibility of Senegal.
And now, finally, Professor, what message does this decision send out to the public in a case an opposition who feel cheated in the November parliamentary election and decides to seek redress at this very Constitutional Council?
Well, this is a very difficult situation because there have been criticisms against them from the public for a long time. And maybe what the outcome of the coming elections may be difficult because if the coalition in power wins, many people might believe that it's because of the attitude of the Constitutional Council, because they may question the neutrality of the Constitutional Council.
Professor Gorgui Dieng is a Senegalese political analyst. For the latest in the sporting world, here is Sankule Janko.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Ghana's Africa Cup of Nations qualification campaign slaughtered again as they were held to a goalless draw by Sudan at Accra Sports Stadium on Thursday. Despite dominating possession and creating several chances, Ghana could not find a breakthrough according to CAF official website. The Black Stars now sit third in Group F with just 2 points from 3 matches, while Sudan's point lifts them to second with 4 points. Angola leads the group with 6 points from 2 games, while Niger is bottom with 1 point. Angola will face Niger on Friday. In a frustrating match for Ghana, Mohamed Kudus and Iñaki Williams came closest to scoring, but Sudan defense marshaled by goalkeeper Mohamed Al-Mustafa stood firm. Elsewhere, Botswana secured a vital 1-0 away victory against Cape Verde in their CAF Africa Cup of Nations C qualifier on Thursday, thanks to an early goal by Timinisi Orabanyi. The win lifts Botswana to 3 points, laying them with Cape Verde, who have also accumulated 3 points from 3 games. Egypt tops the group with 6 points from 2 matches, while Mauritania, with 1 point, will play Egypt on Friday, hoping to close the gap. And DR Congo maintained their perfect record in Group H with a narrow 1-0 victory over Tanzania at Stade de Mataz, thanks to second-half own goal by Clement Mzizi. The win propels the DR Congo to 9 points from 3 matches, firmly establishing them at the top of the group. Tanzania, meanwhile, remains in second place with 4 points, while Ethiopia and Guinea, both yet to win a game, sit in third and fourth respectively ahead of their upcoming clash on Saturday. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Maudo Juf for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Kali. Good afternoon.
And many